Welcome, Kings, to the NFL Week 2 Market Outlook, where we go through the slate game by game, break down our thoughts, evaluate potential live betting opportunities, and provide insight into how we're expecting to position our Circa Millions contest selections. Judah, we're off to a red-hot start to the season, and even off to Week 2. You posted a note on PFF how you should be positioning for live betting the Chargers-Chiefs game last night, and it basically came to fruition almost perfectly. I used it as a framework to help me live trade the game, and I just made a killing. I know you're off at a wedding, but do take comfort that somebody materially benefited from your IP.
I'm thrilled, and I'm glad the process was right there.
Before we do kick off and go through the slate, one of the things we'll post later and something that we'll be updating every week here is a consensus market power ranking. What we're doing is looking through the power rankings from major media providers like ESPN, PFF, 538, Football Outsiders, and then also InPredict, which looks at gambling lines, comes up with a market ranking, and then aggregate all of that, equal weight them to come out with this consensus market power ranking. We see the expected teams there at the top, the Bills, Bucs, Chiefs, but we can see how rapidly the Vikings have moved up to slot number 7. And one of the things that we'll track too from week to week moving forward is actually the delta of how these teams are changing from week to week. And then as we get more and more data, we'll be able to track it through a time series, which could provide some really interesting insights.
I would add one thing. With the 538 and Football Outsider rank specifically, it's only using the data from 2022, which isn't, it's to say it's a different metric almost. Like ESPN, PFF, and InPredict are obviously building in some prior. And I think that isn't to say we shouldn't be paying attention to the 538 and Football Outsiders, but that's just an important word of caution, which is why the Vikings, for instance, are so high, because their week 1 game graded out really well. But that counts for something, and we should pay attention to that.
Yeah, these are different methodologies, approaching it in different ways, and then putting them together can give us a general sense of how the market is positioning. How are they evaluating these teams? Because then that gives us a proxy to better understand whether or not we think a team is maybe over or underrated versus their underlying fundamentals, and that can help us then position our weekly bets. Let's start with the Dolphins at the Ravens. Dolphins currently +3, +105. I saw this been bouncing around. It got a little bit of juice here, but I've seen it at the 3.5. Any strong feelings on this game? The Ravens did not look good last week versus the Jets. That was something that we talked about last week and that we were cautious about. We still did do the Ravens in Survivor. That did make the most sense. And it was never really in doubt that they were going to not win that game because the Jets did look pretty bad, especially the offensive line. Flacco under a ton of pressure. But Flacco still, I know you hate Flacco and you think Flacco is not a NFL starting quarterback, which I probably agree with you there. But he didn't look as putrid as maybe you expected him to.
I'm not saying he's like actively going to hurt your team in the sense of turning the ball over or getting sacked at such a rate where it's impossible to have success. He's just not doing anything to add points. If anything, he can let the surrounding talent elevate him and not the other way around. I think I like the Dolphins here a little bit. First, the Ravens are going to be missing most of their secondary. I think Marlon Humphrey's hurt. Marcus Peters might be back for the first time since 2020. They play a ton of man coverage, and they're going up against 2 upper echelon receivers with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And I think if they create separation well, which I think they will against a weak secondary where man coverage matters more, then almost they'll be able to take the Dolphins and put them on their back. That's almost betting on those 2 guys. Whether or not I can find good props to make that bet or whether that's a bet I want to make on the money line is a different question. I'm just not really sure what to make of the Ravens offense. I don't know if they're trying to replicate the 2019 team, if they're the 2021 team. Was it just a weird week with the Jets? But if Lamar Jackson's not running the ball and the threat of a design run is not in play, the Ravens are not the same offense. And Lamar Jackson didn't run. Is that game plan specific against the Jets because they thought, okay, we don't need to run him because we're playing the Jets? That's a question.
That's what it was.
Which is that's why I want to take one more week.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the 2019 Ravens is off the table. That's not happening. And one of the things I talked about last week too is with the expectation that Lamar Jackson was likely going to be more cautious, a little bit less aggressive over the course of the season. Not necessarily in that game specifically, but it did play out that way. in that game specifically. But I'm not patting myself on the back for that call at all. I think it's more so what you just said. Why show all your cards? Why play super aggressively versus the Jets? They toyed around with them for the first half, didn't look good, but then pulled away in the second half, mostly through a few explosive plays and again, some Jets turnovers. But I think if the Ravens need to use Lamar Jackson in a certain way, they will. Again, not in the 2019 way.
I think almost the play is a live bet where we're looking at Lamar Jackson's usage early and seeing how they want to operate that offense. And again, it's a little uncomfortable because on the snap of fingers, they can just change everything, and their second half game plan can be to run Lamar Jackson. But I think that's almost how I'd want to approach it. Whether that's an under, whether that's a Dolphins bet.
There's a huge coaching edge for the Ravens. If the Dolphins were to take a lead, to bet the Ravens, especially if the Ravens are playing overly conservative again, like they were versus the Jets in the first half, I think they'll flip a switch, and they're capable of flipping a switch. My concern is the Ravens weren't really able to move the ball even on the Jets, unless the Jets defense is pretty decent.
That's something we can talk about in the next game, but I actually think the Jets defense is a lot better than they were last year.
Okay, so if that's the case, then it's maybe not so bad. Essentially, the Ravens had a few explosive plays, and that's what allowed them to pull away. And then again, Jets mistakes.
But that actually, I just want to make one more point, gets to what I was saying earlier about the difference between the 2019 and 2021 team. Was the 2021 team reinvented themselves by basically changing Lamar Jackson's ADOT 2 yards further downfield, and they became a very quick passing and taking a bunch of deep shots, which is a totally different offense than the gain. We know we're going to gain 7 yards of play, running the ball, smashing the defense type offense. That's the 2019 team in my head, as opposed to the 2021 team. And are there, insofar as we can predict explosive plays, the Ravens are going to live and die by them. And I'm curious how they position their offense, but I'm going to take one more week to let everything crystallize before I make any plays.
The other thing is the Patriots defense is not supposed to be very good at all. And the Dolphins scored essentially, I would say, less than 10 points on them. Because one field goal was on a short field, another was a defensive touchdown.
Our drive quality metric had them at 11.7 points.
Boom.
At 12 points.
Exactly. And so now we're going to be playing a much tougher defense on the road. The hook is going to keep people off this game because that doesn't make anyone feel comfortable. All the Dolphins beat the Patriots, plus I'm getting the hook. Ravens didn't look good versus the Jets. I could see Dolphins potentially being a top 10 pick.
I'm not excited to make that pick, but I don't absolutely hate it.
Jets at the Browns. Jets plus 6.5. This is what they were just last week versus the Ravens, who are a much better team than the Browns.
You don't go from being a dog against Carolina to being a 6.5 point favorite against the Jets. Jacoby Brissett was terrible. He had all day to throw. He couldn't do anything. I think the Jets defense is a little better than people anticipate. A part of that's being healthy. I also think that their secondary really has drastically improved. DJ Reed is a really good corner. Sauce Gardner, first round pick, has been brilliant at every level he's played, but there are definitely pieces there. Quinn Williams, Carl Lawson. I think Robert Saleh has been a successful defensive coach. That I'm not just going to assume the Jets are going to be a train wreck on defense because they were decimated by injury last year. And I think that kind of has to be what's built in to the Browns' price.
The total rate on this is already pretty low, 39.5. What it's the lowest on the board. But I already did bet the 39.5 under, just because you're talking about the Jets' defense could be potentially better than the market's currently pricing them. The Browns have a decent defense. And certainly, I think Myles Garrett's going to be able to get pressure. And Flacco is just a statue. One of the things I was texting you about when I was rewatching this game was Flacco didn't look bad at all when he had time.
Yeah, well,
because he just didn't have a lot of time.
And you're not going to get time.
And he can't move at all. So you make him move a little bit off his pivot foot, and all of a sudden, all chaos breaks loose.
But this is not the spot to bet on Joe Flacco then. Myles Garrett's going to destroy the Jets offensive line. There's no active case to be made for both teams.
The thing is, the Jacoby Brissett looked bad. The wide receivers were not helping him whatsoever. Didn't look like the play calling was helping him whatsoever. But I really like those Jets weapons. And man, if Zach Wilson can just be anything less than terrible when he comes back, he could obviously help mitigate some of that offensive line weakness, since he can at least move around.
Especially if the style of play is built on trying to extend plays.
Yeah. I could see upside in that Jets. And again, 6.5 just seems like a lot. The Browns' run game did everything
Yeah.
for them versus the Panthers. And we knew Panthers are already had a weakness for that, and they took advantage of it.
It's not just 6.5. 6.5 is a crazy low total, which means they're really anticipating the Jets not being able to score. The second thing is the Jets should at least be loading the box, and they have the corners who are going to beat the Browns receivers, right? Like, you'd like to think that Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed will be able to beat Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper with Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's how the Jets are going to play defense. The bottom line to me is I don't see how you can back either side, and I think 6.5 is too much.
You're basically saying these are two teams that you really don't want to bet on. But the thing is, you're getting 6.5 points versus a team you don't want to bet on.
Right,
as well.
Exactly.
And I think the market is still too high on the Browns. Basically, the aggregate market consensus ranking is about 14. I think that's way too high with a team led by Jacoby Brissett. And I think the surprise factor here is the Jets' weapons. And then if the Jets' defense is better than market expects, as you talked about, I think that is enough to cover that 6.5, maybe even win this game.
Another game I'm looking to bet live. That's actually an angle I'll be willing to trigger, which is if they're trying to sell out to stop the run.
All right, Commanders at Detroit, currently 1. This has been bouncing around. I've seen it all the way up to 2.5. Bunch of Lions injuries, bringing this price back down. I didn't understand the price to begin with, so I already got some Commanders +2 in my pocket. I would probably do this at Washington -1.5, even maybe -2. But I'm never betting. I will never bet the Lions this season as a favorite, ever.
Well, I wonder how often you'll even get that opportunity.
Exactly. This is the first time the Lions have been a favorite in 25 games, which is certainly justified. Losing by double digits for most of the game versus the Eagles, and then came back and ruined our 5-0 week because we had the Eagles -4. I really like Washington here.
I can't believe I'm saying the Commanders, I think, more than maybe any other team in this week.
Oh, wow.
I think they're a great.
All right, that gives me even more conviction because that was already one of my favorite plays. So.
It feels icky because backing Carson Wentz is icky because he's a variance machine and who knows what's going to happen. But this spot to me has a bunch of different kind of competing factors. One, it's there's some real Lions love that stems from the preseason. It stems from Eric Eager's #Restore the Roar and buzz that created. And I think there's a lot of steam. And that's how you look at the result of the Eagles-Lions game and they stopped Jalen Hurts on 4th down. They've got the ball with the chance to win. And the Commanders are just being totally disrespected. The Lions are decimated by injuries in the worst spots for them. Jared Goff is horrible when he doesn't have time. The difference between Jared Goff's EPA when he plays perfectly blocked, in essence, when his offensive line does their job well for him, and the difference when they don't perfectly block a play, when the play is perfectly blocked, he's fine. With a good offensive line, he's good. And then when the protection breaks down, he's a disaster. It's the 3rd worst quarterback in football. So I don't have any worry about the backdoor cover situation because I don't think the Lions are going to be able to get anything going on offense down 3 offensive linemen. That's 3 weak links and the delta between very good play. Jonah Jackson's a terrific offensive lineman. Frank Ragnar's a terrific offensive lineman. The delta between him and his replacement is huge. And that's really going to have an influence on this game. Not to mention that the Lions last week, they played a ton of man coverage, and their corners cannot cover the Washington receivers, who, by the way, I think are extremely underrated. And I'm also forgetting a key point here, which is they're not going up against the bad defensive line. This is the feared Washington, the 1st-round picks. They're without Chase Young, but still, Montez Sweat is still a terrific edge player. It's not as if they're going up against a bad defensive line. They're hurt in the worst possible spot. I think I'm going to sprinkle some Commanders alt line because I think there's a real blowout possibility because I think that the Lions offense won't be able to get anything going against that defense. And I definitely like them.
We know that the market is hot on the Lions. As you talked about, the win total moved up a whole game over the course of the offseason. And then Lions backers cashed more tickets again last week. So now they have even more conviction, more confidence, more money in their pockets to now deploy on the Lions as short favorites versus Carson Wentz. Let's dunk on Carson Wentz. It's always easy to do. He threw another terrible, ugly, classic Carson Wentz pick last week. That's exactly what we expected. Oh, they squeaked one out versus the Jags. Now they're going to come home versus the Lions. Oh, Lions only -1. Give me the Lions. And I'm going to fade that. I think Circa, though, the contest is going to be a little bit sharper and is thinking that way as well. I would be very surprised if there's more Lions picks than Commanders picks in Circa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colts at the Jags. Currently, Colts -3, so a lot of pressure coming down the Jags. I thought it was 4.5. I already bet it at 4.
Yeah, I bet it at 4 right before, actually, like a half hour before it moved down to 3, following some injury news that Michael Pittman is questionable. As far as Buccaneers probably out. Shaq Leonard is out.
Is he out again, though?
He is out again.
He's out again?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I said it on the offseason. It's going to be a while till he's back. He's got a serious injury.
Because I saw that he was like practicing all week.
He was ruled out. Oh, and Alec Pierce has concussion. He's out. The fact that it's back surgery, and the fact that he wasn't questionable this week and they just ruled him out leads me to believe it's going to link.
Shaq Leonard out. Dude, the dude was practicing all week.
Yeah,
oh my God, I love Jags now.
Wow.
Dude, I liked Jags. This was definitely a top 5 pick, no doubt about it. Because again, I've only bet like 3 games. Commanders being 1, Jags the 2nd. That was assuming, all right, because again, I was reading, Shaq Leonard full practice 3 days in a row. He's come back.
He has been ruled out.
Yeah, and then I saw a little bit of news around Pittman missed practice. But I'm like, he's probably still going to play. So I'm assuming they have Leonard and Pittman, and I still like Jags +4. And in Circa, we got the 4.
Yeah.
And I think now they're going on the road down south to Jacksonville, who they put in a great performance in week 1.
Top 10 drive quality score by our numbers. And that was with a bunch of drops in the end zone, which again, they're probably going to be drops. They're going to be drops. It's going to happen.
Yeah, you can price that in.
Whether those happen in the end zone, though, is probably not priced in. And the fact that they didn't convert, in fact, I think they failed on downs in one of those instances and kicked a field goal. Those points do matter. So the performance could have been even better had the drops come on a 2nd and 10 from the 50 as opposed to in the end zone.
Yeah. I love the resilience that we saw from the Jags to keep fighting, come back, take the lead. In fact, it gives me even more conviction to bet the Jags this week because they lost that game as well. But they know that they were competitive. They had an opportunity, in fact, even still to win it near the end there. But again, you still got a young quarterback. You still got a team coming together, a new coaching staff. And that's why I was like talking to you, I think, offline about saying it was like, because they didn't bring it all the way home, you can't really expect them to necessarily this early in the season. This is one of the reasons why I really liked Washington last week too. And we had it in one of our Circa picks as well. I bet a lot of Washington, but on our live stream, you're talking about like how when they were losing by double digits, we got the Jags 10.5, Jags +9.5. You thought the Jags were going to come back and win the game, and they did come all the way back and took the lead.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to be a great team to live bet over the course of the season as well.
Absolutely. Also, just like they're not dealing with any injuries. There was no one on their injury report Wednesday, Thursday. No one.
Love it.
Yeah, I got the bet in this morning. I'm glad we got it before it got down to 3.
Beautiful. All right, Bucks. This is another interesting one. Bucks at the Saints at 2.5 right now. I think it opened 3, maybe even 3.5. Now it's gone under the 3. Both teams already dealing with a bunch of injuries. It's well documented. Tom Brady has struggled mightily versus the Saints since he's come to Tampa. Some ugly losses, particularly last year. One, they got demolished, and then another, like a 9-zip loss where the Bucs just couldn't do anything. And now the line just went off the board.
Oh, I wonder if there's some injury news that just came in. Yeah, I wonder. Also documented that Marshawn Lattimore has beaten Mike Evans every time, aside from one early on. Like I think there's some signal there, especially because Brady does have a tendency if he needs to lock onto one receiver.
Yeah, this is probably a layoff one. I don't think there was like too much signal to take away from the Bucs week 1 game versus the Cowboys. And then the Saints obviously looked pretty crappy throughout 3/4 of that game. And was it just working out the kinks, like whole new basically wide receiver set for Jameis Winston? And we know Jameis Winston can also start off slow, but man, there was a few kind of like missed passes between Winston and Mike Thomas early in that game. Like these guys just aren't on the right page.
Yeah.
And then in that 4th quarter, it was like they were in sync through some just perfect dimes to Mike Thomas. And so was that the Falcons, again, relaxing, playing this like zone defense, and Winston was picking it apart, and a better team just kind of forcing their will over the course of the latter half of that game? Because if it's fourth quarter Saints, oh my gosh, I love the Saints.
Yeah, I think, which by the way, I think we can absolutely see towards the end of the season.
Yes.
Right, like if everything clicks, they've got some real upside.
Yeah, just seeing that fourth quarter opens the door to your point to say, this is the type of team you could see.
Yeah.
I still love the Saints to win this division.
The bottom line for me is, if I was filling out a pick'em, I'd take the Saints here. I'm not excited about it. I don't like it enough to bet. I also have enough futures on the Saints, specifically in the NFC South, and selling the Bucs, that that's enough exposure for me. Yeah. But I want to see how this game plays out as a fan. I'm ecstatic about it, honestly.
Yeah. From a live betting perspective, that if the Bucs go down, I don't know if I'm going to be quick to try to jump on the Bucs to kind of make any sort of comeback in this one. I actually got my face ripped off on betting the Bucs live versus the Saints when they were at a deficit multiple times, and they never really staged a rally.
To your point, I mean, we'll see what the receivers are like, but Brady, obviously timing is crucial for him. That's emblematic in Tyler Johnson's experience. It was like a fine receiver. He was just never on the same page as Brady. And if we're talking about down a couple of receivers, facing a good secondary, probably going to have some pressure in his face. It's not a team I want to be backing coming back from the deficit.
All right, Panthers at Giants. Panthers plus 2.5. This went down to 2. I don't think I've seen a 3 yet. I've already taken the 2.5. I think the Panthers win this straight up. I think it should be pick'em at best. The Giants should be favored, and certainly by almost a field goal versus anyone at this point in time. We liked the Giants last week. We had the Giants 5.5. Had some Giants money line. You even took some alt lines on the Giants as a potential kind of tail play. They made a few different calls here that you could see from the head coaching perspective that it's going to offer some upside for the Giants. Barkley obviously looked awesome. This is one of the first times that we're really getting to see him at full health. And it looks like they're certainly going to be leveraging him a lot over the course of the season. And same bonehead plays from Danny Dimes. He can make a few throws here and there. The Giants defense looks very vulnerable. And Baker Mayfield and this Panthers team really came alive in that second half, fourth quarter, a theme that we saw throughout last week, which was this dichotomy between first half and second half performances. And if you wanted to lean into teams as a week 2 theme of leaning into teams that played better in the second half, Panthers would certainly be one of those teams.
I really like the Panthers early on in the week. There's one angle that's really keeping me from betting the Panthers, which is that their run defense is atrocious.
Yes.
Last year, they faced a horrible set of running backs, and we saw the Browns run all over them. They had 220 yards rushing. And I think the Giants and their coaching staff is smart enough to adapt and tailor their game plan towards basically getting the ball to Barkley in space. And I think Barkley can just totally run over the Panthers, shorten the game, and the Giants can win that way. In that instance, there's an interesting play of betting the Giants to win the first half and bet the under, essentially saying the Giants are going to shorten the clock, ride Barkley. It'll be a low-scoring half, and the Giants come out and win. But everything else, aside from that one angle, is definitely pointing me towards the Panthers. The Giants are not going to be able to cover DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Baker Mayfield's a far better quarterback. Panthers have a massive defensive edge, with the exception of the run defense.
I think Baker dropped the snap 2 or 3 times last week. So just also emblematic of just working with new players. You're in a new team, still learning a new playbook. And then also a lot of, I think, jitters that we talked about, how he's obviously a very emotional dude. And I think that was going to be hypersensitive last week in that revenge game versus the Browns. And now it's in the past. It's in the rearview mirror. You can move on. And I think we get a much better performance from him, more reflective of that later stage, fourth quarter type performance from Baker Mayfield. But yeah, you make some great points. Is Saquon Barkley going to be a guy you think you're going to have in your kind of core DFS line?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that would definitely be my biggest worry as well, because that's the only thing that kept the Browns in that game, which was just Chubb and Hunt just running all over. So Patriots at the Steelers, Patriots minus 2.5 on the road. Obviously, no TJ Watt for the Steelers. One of the things we talked about in the offseason pod, I see some other people talking about it on Twitter now as well, just how different that defense has performed historically with TJ Watt off the field. You're already low on the Steelers defense, even with TJ Watt. And they had some of those explosive defensive plays last year. A lot of that turnover luck that they had last year all came and showed itself again in week 1. But the market seems to be recognizing that because the market's down on the Patriots as well. That's for sure. Everyone hates the Patriots. And they're minus 2.5 road favorites in this. How are you thinking about this one? This is one of those you just want to, it's ugly, just lay off.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that I don't hold that view at all. I like the Patriots here.
You like the Patriots here?
I like the Patriots here.
Oh, wow.
I think the sell-off has gone too far. And I think the Steelers without TJ Watt and with Mitch Trubisky, at least early on in the season, bottom 3 team in the league, for sure. I don't see how they're going to get any offense going. The Patriots defense played very well last week. Whether that was a reflection of the Dolphins, I'm not exactly sure. But it certainly wasn't so bad to the point where the Dolphins could just run over them and just pass at will, which is saying something. It means they're not going to be a disaster on defense. How is Mitch Trubisky going to get anything going? The Steelers have nothing going for them. Nothing. And I think there's a real sell-off on the Patriots, which obviously I've been beating that drum for a while that I'm not high on the Patriots, but I think we need to put into perspective again. As you said last week on the stream, Mac Jones is not a bottom-tier quarterback. He's still average, maybe below average. Patriots still have like decent weapons. Going up against the bad defense, everyone's selling them off. I think that this is a spot the Patriots bounce back.
I could see that because again, I watched that Patriots-Dolphins game. And again, we already talked about how the Dolphins basically scored no points on them. In fact, now I even think about it too, is even in that one touchdown they did get, it was like a 4th and 6, thread the needle to Waddle and broke off a long run for a touchdown. I feel like the narrative around, again, Mac Jones was already very low. I feel like it's gotten even lower now. And I watched the game, I didn't think he even played that bad. He threw one beautiful like 50-yard bomb that was like perfect. Even the one pick he threw in the end zone when they were driving down, it was like a fantastic pick. And it looked like Devontae Parker tried a little bit harder. It probably would have just been incomplete. Or if you had vintage Devontae Parker, he probably would have caught the ball for a touchdown. Yeah. I saw that a couple times actually in that game where he was kind of expecting Devontae Parker to bail him out. And I don't know if Devontae's got the same hops or whatnot. But I think, again, Mac Jones didn't play well, but he didn't play atrocious by any means. Aguilar had a fumble, like that got stuffed on 4th down. There was multiple things that went wrong for the Patriots in that game.
I like the Patriots here.
Okay. Falcons at Rams. Falcons +10. Rams getting the 10 days, coming off a shellacking from the Bills. Falcons surprised most of the market, certainly not us. I think we are certainly higher on the Falcons than the market. We talked about how the Falcons could potentially have an explosive offense, which they certainly showed. And in fact, there was actually multiple plays when I rewatched that game that so many things had to break right for the Saints in that 4th quarter for the Falcons just not to pull away in that game. In fact, there was a huge 3rd down that they just get 3rd and 1. They just get the 1st down. The game's over. Saints never get the ball back.
Yeah.
Even. So I thought the Falcons played great. I wouldn't even say that the Falcons collapsed in the end. I would just say maybe the defense played way too soft to allow the Saints to come back. But it wasn't like that the Falcons offense got exposed in the second half or they couldn't move the ball in the second half. They still could.
Yeah.
I love the way Mariota moved around the pocket. He threw some awesome passes. You called out Drake London was probably going to have a good game. He looked great. He had 2 drops, but again, he's a rookie, but otherwise played certainly above expectation, I think. There's a lot of points.
Yeah, I like the points. I like the under also. There's some weird stuff going on at SoFi that like all of the Rams home games are going under and their away games are not. Which could be noise, it could be signal though. It's tough because the prices really moved. The look-ahead line was 14, and this is 10 now. I like the Falcons. I definitely do. I have no sense of what the Rams are going to look like. The week 1 to me could have been a reflection of this Bills defense is legitimately great. And like the Rams weren't getting anything going because the Bills defense was good, or like they've taken a step back, or it's some combination of the 2 things. But without kind of more data to paint the full picture, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the Rams. Honestly, a spot to me if I'm playing the Falcons is I like the Mariota, Kyle Pitts DFS stack. Only because those guys are so underpriced and Mariota's got serious rushing upside. But like Stafford is the type of quarterback who is so reliant on chemistry. Kenny Golladay was terrific in Detroit, because Matthew Stafford will make certain throws, downfield, jump ball throws that no other quarterback makes. But Stafford has a certain comfort level with Galladay. Like, Galladay goes to the Giants and it's a disaster. And you see it with Stafford and not throwing to Robinson, not throwing the same kind of backside digs that he was with other players. I'm certainly not betting the Rams here.
Absolutely not. In fact, I've seen some quote-unquote pro bettors out there issuing some of their handicaps and thoughts and actually going with the Rams, thinking that they're buying them low right here. Buying them low from a broader kind of market sell-off in the sense of, I'm buying them off getting crushed by the Bills. And I'm also buying them low in the sense of, as you talked about, opened minus 14, is now sold off down to 10, and now buying that dip. Whereas I think the Rams crushed the Falcons. It's 31-10.
Yeah.
Or this game's going to be close.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be a difference between 14 and 10 to actually suggest that you should now try to buy the Rams just off that 4-point move. The Rams, we talked about how the Rams offensive line was going to be materially weaker this year. That certainly showed up versus a vicious pass rush from the Bills. But the Falcons sacked James Winston like 4 or 5 times. And again, Grady Jarrett is a Pro Bowler. And I would say that the Saints certainly have a better offensive line than the Rams. If the Falcons get pressure on Stafford as well, that could also be big in this game.
I like that a lot. I think this line probably should be closer to 7, which means I think it's certainly a good Circa pick for all of the reasons we've outlined it. But I also don't hate sprinkling at least a little bit on the Rams alt spread, basically playing at the angle of they're going to absolutely demolish.
Yeah, we know that the Falcons offensive line isn't great either, but they have a mobile quarterback at least. And also I think, again, they like to get creative with Mariota to Patterson, and now they got the big dudes at wide receiver with both London and Pitts.
Arthur Smith is a great play designer. I've said it time and time again. He's a terrific play designer. You can bet on that.
The downside here is the Falcons defense implodes, and the Falcons offense just can't even keep up with a vintage Rams offense coming to fruition.
Play the alt angle, and then also play and create a massive middle. Or just where you're saying it's not going to be a 34-21 game.
Yeah, like Rams alt line 17.5.
Exactly.
Is a good play because I think the Rams win this game by 3 touchdowns, or this game's very competitive. Seahawks at the Niners. Seahawks +9. This was 10. I feel like every single time it gets to 10, then it gets bid back down. It went down to 8.5. I think maybe even 8. So currently 9. It's 8.5 in Circa. Geno Smith played like the best game I ever saw him play. There's just so many questions around the Niners. The thing is, this is one of those games where I'm trying to learn from you in that, like, sometimes you don't even want to entertain a handicap around a game because there's just way too much noise here. It could be this, could be that, could be that. Like, there's so many different scenarios here. Like, you're just picking out of a hat. It's a total lottery. I feel like that's how this one is, even with the line so big. Maybe Geno Smith turned a corner. Maybe the coaching staff has found a gem. And the Seahawks offense is going to play much better than expectation. Trey Lance sucks. They can't move the ball. The Seahawks defense outperforms. The loss of Jamal Adams is actually maybe a positive. Or maybe none of that is true. And the Seahawks actually are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Kind of the markets had priced them. We thought that they were likely also going to be. And this upside of the Niners coaching staff, the Niners team is so much better. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. And they continue to work out some of these kinks.
For all of the reasons you just outlined, that's why I don't think you can touch that. As a fantastic sweatshirt, by the way. I don't think you can touch the pregame line, but I think right for live betting here. Right, because there are a lot of long-term angles at play. What is Trey Lance going to be? Did Geno Smith turn the corner? All of those things, there's a little bit of uncertainty before the game of will this start to manifest this week? It's an 8-point spread. It's huge. And I think from 2 to 53, the Niners have a much better roster. And if you want to include the coach, that is certainly at play here. But I don't see how there's so much uncertainty to bet before the game. But if you start to see Trey Lance is not playing well, he's holding the ball for too long, as he did last week, as he has his entire career, he just doesn't have it yet. That's not the same thing as saying he won't have it. Yeah. But I think we can bet right now that Trey Lance doesn't have it. Let's bet the under. Geno Smith has it. Trey Lance doesn't have it, let's bet the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. This is definitely a game that you potentially want to live bet. It's just like all the noise around the Niners and the Bears game last week as well. So it's like, what do you really take from it? Like, you can obviously tell that they didn't play well, and they probably should have played better, being a touchdown favorite, ended up losing by 10 and didn't do anything in the second half. But we've seen Geno Smith play for 4 or 5 years. And in every single instance, like, he never play well. Certainly not as well as he just did. I think I saw a stat that he's 8-0 or 9-0 ATS.
Yeah, playing this out over a 17-game season, Geno Smith's not someone I'm looking to buy into, but there could be a 2-game stretch in the same way that Sam Darnold had a great 4-game stretch in his second year with the Jets. You can hold both things in your head at the same time. That Geno Smith is a bad quarterback and has a bad projected output, and also he could be good this week.
Even though the whole way we're talking about this game isn't +3.
Yes, that's it, +8.
Yeah.
There's a huge built-in prior of the Niners are still the team that went to the NFC Championship game.
If you're betting the Niners, you're saying we know who these teams are. And therefore, I think this is what we don't know who these teams are. So, if anything, it's Seahawks. You cannot bet the Niners. This moves out to 14.5 live. That's where you want this.
That's beautiful.
All right, Bengals at Cowboys. Cowboys looked atrocious last week versus the Bucs. They're at home, +7.5. They were +8.5, so it's come down a point. They looked bad with Dak. Now they got Cooper Rush starting at quarterback. Obviously, the Bengals lost at home versus Steelers as touchdown favorites. Joe Burrow throwing 4 picks, missed the extra point. A lot of things had to go wrong for the Bengals to ultimately end up losing that game. Do they crush Dallas on the road?
Yes, I think so.
Looks like this could move down to 7. It's -7.5, -103 right now. 7 seems a lot more palatable from a betting perspective. In the contest, it is 7. So I was expecting it to go down to 7.
I'm not betting the 7. I would bet the alt line if I'm betting anything.
I like that.
We know the game script for how the Bengals dominate them. Like, this isn't also, again, delta between Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton, not the same thing as delta between Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush is bad. He's bad. Andy Dalton's a serviceable backup. It's a very difficult scenario for me to see how the Cowboys are going to consistently put up points.
The Cowboys looked bad in past years when Dak was off the field, and that was with Gallup and Cooper and a much better offensive line.
I'm looking in our database. I think this is one of the lowest adjusted point totals we have at 4.3 drive quality, like bottom 1 percentile here, and that's with Dak Prescott playing half the game. It's even we said on the stream before last week. I was talking about how we might think we know what the Bucs and Cowboys are like, but we don't, because like the Cowboys actually, we've never really seen Dak without a good offensive line, right? Like, it's not just that Dak went down, the entire team has lost. They got worse basically everywhere, and we're hugely reliant last year on turnovers. 30 more expected points added on turnovers than the second closest team. And I don't think even the Cowboys in week 2, I don't think are a better opponent than the Steelers in week 1. And it's basically the same line.
I'm surprised this line is trending towards 7. There's a contingency out there fading. I can't say buying the Cowboys. I can't see anyone buying the Cowboys, but fading the Bengals. The Dallas offense at this point in time has to be worse than even the Pittsburgh offense.
That's what I was saying.
Played last week.
That's what I was saying. This is the same line, and like the offense has got to be much worse.
The fact that Burrow threw, he was sacked 5 times, threw 4 picks, and they were an extra point away from winning the game still. Okay, Texans on the road +10 versus Denver. Texans surprise to the upside. Broncos surprise to the downside. But this week's price is fading both those performances. Texans were up versus Colts 20-3. You love the Texans. Love the Texans last week. That came to fruition. Cashed a lot of tickets. Was very nice. Unfortunately, didn't get the money line. And then Broncos certainly played better than the score. And I think our adjusted score had Broncos winning that game. Fumbled 2 times into the end zone. There's a lot of points. I couldn't bet the Broncos here, but I feel like you're getting a little bit greedy if you want to try to bet the Texans.
Yeah, I don't see either side here. I think this price probably right.
Cardinals at the Raiders. This is one we've already started to lean a little bit into. It was 3.5, and then shot up to 6, and then we bought that 6. It's certainly my biggest pregame position. It's currently Cardinals +5, and in the contest, it's Cardinals +5.5. So they're on the road, but they were just -6 versus the Chiefs, who are obviously in a totally different class than the Raiders. I think we've been very loud about selling the Raiders over the course of the offseason. They're 0-1, they're on the right stage, but they did play competitively near the end there versus the Chargers. We're certainly in a position to potentially even win that.
Yeah.
Certainly a cover.
Yeah. I think that reflected more on the Chargers than to the Raiders.
Yes.
Which is the Chargers just completely took the foot off the gas. But yeah, I think I wrote about this also for PFF this week, that these are essentially the same teams. They're like eerily similar on defense, with 2 good edge players each, a couple good secondary players, awful linebackers. The defenses look almost exactly the same, which leads me to say, okay, I think Kyler Murray is the better quarterback. Also, Kyler Murray is the type of quarterback who likes to play kind of backyard ball, of launching the ball deep. He's a terrific deep passer. He's extending plays. And I think another week with these receivers building a little more chemistry will really do wonders for him. And by the way, I think they had a perfectly league average offensive game last week by our adjusted scores, by our drive quality, top 10, by drive EPA also. Like, the offense was fine. We knew they'd get steamrolled on defense. They had no talent, and Patrick Mahomes was the perfect quarterback to take advantage of that. Like, we said this on the stream on Sunday. It means nothing. That game means nothing. That was perfectly built into expectation. I think this game is going to be a shootout.
You like to over 51. This is the highest total on the board by far.
Yeah, I think the way this game doesn't go over is each offense shooting themselves in the foot. If each offense is playing at their capability, I think this is like a shootout, and the team that has the ball last is going to win. But the market's pricing this as like Raiders big favorites. I think this will probably be a pickup.
Bears at Green Bay, Bears +10. There was 8, and then got bid up. So everyone fading the Bears after that Niners win. And certainly the Bears didn't show any promise, even despite beating the Niners. Maybe the defense played a little bit better than expectation, but the offense certainly didn't show anything. Had a few broken plays, a few explosive plays, and I think that's something that you'll always have to be able to price in also with Justin Fields. He's always going to be able to create something with his legs, find an open receiver potentially downfield. That's how Bears are going to cover games and potentially win games. Currently 10, -105, potentially trending back under the 10. This is also one of the lowest totals on the board at 41.5. This is one of those games, especially because I'm a Bears fan, that like I can't bet Bears, shouldn't bet Bears. I probably have no actionable perspective on this game. So it's all you. What's the guidance?
I would have liked for there to have been more overreaction. There's still a little bit of question marks about the Packers. How does this offense gel? They certainly didn't play great last week, even if we do account for the Christian Watson drop touchdown. I don't think the Bears showed us anything. I don't think you can bet either side. The market's pricing this right out.
I think the way the Bears covered this game is, again, Justin Fields makes a play with his legs, finds a receiver downfield type thing, and that the Bears defense also is maybe better than the market is currently pricing it at. And the Packers offense still has not had a sufficient amount of time to work out the kinks, for Rodgers to develop the proper relationships with his wide receivers. I also heard that this could potentially be another bad weather game, not as bad as Bears-Niners, but still impacting overall play. I think that's one of the things driving the totals price this low at this point in time. So two Monday night games to close. Titans at Bills. Titans +10. Man, we got a lot of really big lines.
Yeah.
We already had our Survivor bloodbath in week 1, so I wonder if we'll get it again.
I don't see the same thing as week 1. I actually think all the favorites win this week. All the big favorites do. I think probably 10 is value, just because the Bills have such an ability on both ends to either run up the score by putting up 40, or their defense is so good that they can limit the Titans to 14 or whatever it is, and this could really be a blowout. But I think, like, in terms of your power ranking teams and using an adjusted point spread, the 10 seems exactly right.
Yeah, betting against the Titans at +10 just doesn't seem wise. Again, all the writing on the wall seems like the Bills could potentially blow out Tennessee. This Tennessee offense, if they get down deficit, that's going to take Henry out of the game. And then you're going to rely on Tannehill and a bunch of no-names at wide receiver, essentially, to try to go tit for tat with the Bills, probably the most explosive offense in the league.
It's a question of then I guess if we're playing at this price, the question of whether or not the Titans can keep up with the Bills. So if we're not looking at a power ranking perspective, then 10 does seem appealing there. Because I don't think the Titans will be able to score 21 if the Bills are going to score 31, especially in the absolute worst game flow for them of just like relying on Tannehill and the receivers to win.
That's definitely off market because the 10s are going to scare people away. Especially when it's not versus a demonstrably bad team.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's really pricing the Titans as a demonstrably bad team. In fact, I would say the market is still quite high on Tennessee. And it's another thing we've been very vocal about in the offseason is fading the Titans this year. Certainly have a lot of exposure on them on the alt under. PFF has them ranked 10th right now. Football Outsiders 14th. Aggregate right there in the middle at 16. And I would say that they're certainly a worse team than middle of the road.
I think that's right.
All right, Vikings +2 on the road at Philly. Vikings put in obviously that great performance versus the Packers, and the Eagles were in control for most of the game versus the Lions in Detroit. They let the Lions come storming back, only won by 3. Couldn't put them sufficiently away. If the Vikings really are a top 5 offense this year, I think the Vikings +2 is a screaming buy. If that was an outlier performance and they're going to run through a bunch of different kinks and we're going to see primetime Kirk Cousins, then you got to stay away. I already bet Eagles -1 early in the week. And this is one of the reasons why I don't like betting really early in the week, because I already have post-mortem regret because I just don't have the same conviction.
And you recognize the fee is meaningless once you actually start the live bet. So betting early doesn't mean anything.
No. I think if the Eagles get like 2 first downs, this thing's gonna move to like 3.5.
I said the inside thing. I said the inside thing out loud. But to your point about the Vikings, I think I'm almost willing. Maybe I'm like crazy overreacting, but there's one thing that I just can't escape, which is Justin Jefferson getting on linebackers consistently. Right? The Vikings didn't win by anything other than Justin Jefferson absolutely dominating. That was the offense. First off, that's sustainable. He's amazing. And also, you don't accidentally get Jefferson on linebackers. That doesn't accidentally happen. Which leads me to believe that like Kevin O'Connell's doing something right. And like his scheme is working. It's emblematic of the fact that Kevin O'Connell's going to create mismatches in the same way that Sean McVay creates mismatches. You gotta be on the Vikings here, right? Like any sign of, okay, we need to wait here. I don't think that's true. It's like we have all the evidence we need. Tough though, because the Eagles are, like their offense could be electric. I have doubts about Jalen Hurts, and even if you watch the game, he's like missing some bad throws. But if A.J. Brown is catching the ball in space, as he does, and picking up 15 yards after the catch, his offense could be really good.
In our aggregate market power rankings, this is the 6th and 7th best team right now. The Eagles are not this good.
No.
This is pricing in that Jalen Hurts is certainly going to be a better and better quarterback over the course of the season. I don't think we saw anything in week 1 that opens that door.
No.
Yeah, I think there's still just as many question marks.
If you're an elite defense, you don't accidentally give up 31 points to the Lions. And earned points too. Their drive quality was 4th with 32 points. I think there was something meaningfully that's changed with Vikings, which is the offensive scheme, and I think we can bank on that continuing. I don't think we can say the same about the Eagles. I like the Vikings.
Yeah, we can definitely say that Kevin O'Connell has made a meaningful change if we get a good game out of Kirk Cousins on
Primetime.
Because primetime Kirk is miserable, especially ATS.
I don't care how uncomfortable I am. If it's the right play, it's the right play. You don't want to be betting on the week 1 result. That seems a little uncomfy. But if it's the right call and like I'm working off the right assumptions that this is about Kevin O'Connell and like this is meaningful signal it's going to play out, it gives me a little bit of comfort that the process is right, even though it definitely doesn't feel good on the inside.
So I think we got Jags, especially at the 4.
Yeah.
Commanders.
Jags, Commanders.
You like Patriots -2. I think I can get on board with that.
I like the Cardinals also. 5.5.
Cardinals, yeah.
I don't.
The thing is, just this is in that Cardinals game. I don't think those points are probably like not.
I was gonna say I like the Cardinals there, but I don't think it's a spread bet.
We can't bet the money line.
No, it can't.
All right, so if we do Patriots, Jags, Commanders, I think that's 3 locked and loaded.
Yeah, I like the Bills, and I think I like the Vikings too.
I could do Bills. I was going to be scared off by that 10.
Yeah,
no one's
the Bills.
One reason why I wouldn't love to take the Bengals is just because, again, they're on the road. It's a touchdown. And if everyone's going to be on the Bengals too, then you barely get any alpha from it.
Yeah, I like the Vikings. People are definitely gonna be scared off. The Eagles love this. Almost out of control.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, I can see on Twitter the types of people who bet Circa and what their thought process is.
Yeah.
Jets 6.5 makes sense. That price is crazy to me.
No one's going to take Jets.
No one's gonna take Jets.
What about Saints Bucks? Nothing there?
I think I like the Bengals.
Yeah, probably the Bengals, just because the Vikings Eagles, they're two relatively good teams. There's upside in the Vikings, and maybe you want to be early to that trade before the market truly meaningfully upgrades the Vikings and realizes how good that offense is. Or maybe that's not the case, because there is at least upside potentially with the Eagles as well. Maybe Jalen Hurts does get better over time. And A.J. Brown, you talked about, I mean, it's obviously a massive weapon for them as well. Still going to be at home, and maybe the defense does play a little bit better. They relaxed versus the Lions. I mean, they were beating them by like 17 points at multiple times.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cowboys look really bad.
Yeah. They look bad with
And
that.
could be worse now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's very hot to fade the Bengals right now. It's like very fashionable.
Yeah.
So we got Bengals, Bills, Jags, Commander, Patriots. All right. Good stuff. All right. That will close our NFL Week 2 Market Outlook podcast and stream. We'll see you next time. And that's Closing Bet.